increases in electricity rates due to the Muskrat Falls project. Today, we are one step closer. Last April, we presented to you our rate management plan, protecting you from the cost impacts of Muskrat Falls. We said that managing electricity rates would require us to reduce expenses, raise revenue, and collaborate with the Government of Canada to manage the finances of the project. We are delivering on our plan. In a moment, Premier Ball will update you on discussions we have had with our federal partners about financing the project. I'd like to thank him for his leadership and tenacity, which have been really the cornerstone of our discussions with our federal partners. Please welcome Honourable Dwight Ball, Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Some time ago, I made a commitment to you, the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador, that you will not bear the burden of the higher electricity rates or taxes as a result of Muskrat Falls. Today, I am delivering on that commitment. Thank you, Minister Coady, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out to this important announcement. And thank you to Minister O'Regan for joining us here today. I know, Seamus, this is a priority for you. After all, it's the people of this province that we are all working for. I have been adamant that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians cannot afford to pay the significantly higher electricity rates that would have resulted from the poorly conceived Muskrat Falls project. A project that is not our legacy, but it's one that we inherited. One that I fought against in opposition, and one that I've been cleaning up since becoming Premier. We all know that the PCs designed Muskrat Falls. We know that they announced Muskrat Falls, they launched Muskrat Falls, and they sanctioned Muskrat Falls. And under this structure, electricity rates would nearly double. Rates that are 13 cents today would skyrocket to 23 cents next year, and eventually up to 78 cents. And it wasn't just one premier. It wasn't just one PC government. It was successive governments. At one point, they went as far as to kick out the Public Utilities Board. And the current PCs are no better than their predecessors. They take no responsibility for the government's actions. The current leader would like us to forget the past. What he's asked for is a bailout instead of a solution. He says he expects a $200 million check. Well, I would say to Mr. Crosby, this is a $30 billion problem. Mr. Crosby likes to throw around a lot of political jargon, but talk is cheap, and my government has chosen to focus on finding solutions. We have focused on what matters most. No government since Confederation has faced a tougher challenge. We have already heard tough language from the project's CEO. The Public Utilities Board, in its most recent report, said the anticipated rate increases are unprecedented. How is it that a province that is an energy powerhouse could become a province where people are scared to turn the lights on? This is what we've been cleaning up since forming government. I've said it before, and I can't help but repeat it here again today. Just imagine what we could have done with the money that's been already spent on this project. Billions of dollars to date. Imagine the programs and the services where we could use that. So what is the solution? Well, first and foremost, it starts with a partner. the federal government. And I'm pleased to be here today alongside Minister O'Regan to announce a significant milestone in the negotiations of the restructuring of the financing of the Lower Churchill projects to help ensure that they are financially sustainable for the long term. And thanks to our partnership with the federal government, we now have a sustainable long-term solution. A solution to protect ratepayers from the negative impacts of the Muskrat Falls project today and into the future. From the beginning, our government has worked long, hard, and diligently to get Muskrat Falls back on track. Appointing Stan Marshall as an experienced CEO in the utilities industry to lead Nalcor was one such step. Expanding the board of directors of Nalcor, adding independence to the Oversight Committee, securing an additional federal loan guarantee, restoring the public utilities role in giving oversight to the Muskrat Falls project, improving project management, establishing a commission of inquiry to determine how this project was sanctioned. And we're delivering a rate management plan. That brings us to today's announcement. In April of 2019, our government and our federal partners committed to working together to identify ways that the province can achieve rate mitigation. We established a working group with senior officials from across government, and the team of legal advisors, financial advisors, electricity experts to develop a range of strategic financial considerations. And since that time, we've had discussions to determine the measures to protect residents from rising electricity rates resulting from the Muskrat Falls project. We had to solve the problem, not for the short term, but for the long term. To mitigate the impact of Muskrat Falls, it comes down to a $30 billion over the life of the agreement. And we're going to deal with that in three ways. First, the solution involves transitioning the Muskrat Falls Labrador transmission assets revenue model to a traditional cost of service model. This will ensure that the equity returns from Nalcor are redirected to benefit ratepayers. Essentially, you won't pay this on your monthly light bills. This will be off your monthly light bills. The cost of service model reflects the approach that's used by regulated utilities throughout North America. Secondly, with the Government of Canada's cooperation, monetizing suitable assets such as our dividends from the Labrador Island Link is also required to ensure a sustainable long-term solution. Now let me be clear, this is not about selling on assets. It's about using those assets to the benefit of ratepayers. Thirdly, to reduce cash requirements related to servicing the project's debt, the Government of Canada is allowing a deferral of the sinking fund, and that's worth approximately $150 million. And if required, a deferral on the cost overrun escrow payments. The agreement with both levels of government will be implemented by project commissioning. The PUB highlighted that in the report last week. Lastly, the demand for electricity is important. So we are pleased that the Government of Canada is also prepared to work with the provincial government to consider opportunities for further electrification and decarbonization. Work is already underway to convert public buildings in the province from oil to electricity. In addition to discussions with the federal government, work is continuing on the provincial government's rate mitigation plan. This last Friday, the Public Utilities Board provided us with the final report on rate mitigation options. I sincerely thank them for their work. This report will also be used to inform our next steps. This is a very complex financial solution. We've done the deep analysis to completely mitigate this $30 billion funding gap. To reiterate, Your rates will not go up as a result of Muskrat Falls. At this time, I would like to thank the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister Friedland, Minister Bill Morneau, for their continued partnership and working towards a solution. And I also want to thank Minister O'Regan and our MPs, as he can here today, for your commitment on this file. There's been no stronger ally than our federal colleagues and our efforts to protect ratepayers in this province. We will continue to work together with our federal partners on easing the pressure on ratepayers. Now, when speaking to the media last week, I talked about the importance of putting a great team in place. And I am fortunate to work with an experienced, established team. The results of their professionalism and their determination is present in this significant milestone here today. I'd also want to thank Minister Coady and Minister Osborne, our complete cabinet, and our caucus, and the many public sector employees who have worked tirelessly over the past weeks and months to get us to this point. Your work behind the scenes is invaluable. I'm beyond proud of our team, our government. As I can say, we are in a far better place today thanks to this comprehensive plan, a plan that is delivering positive results. We're making choices. We're finding solutions. We're helping communities across the province, helping families, helping seniors. And I am proud to be delivering on our commitment to you. Today is yet another step towards building upon a shared vision for our province. That is an ideal place to live, to work, and to raise your family. Together, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue to move Newfoundland and Labrador forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier Ball, and I also want to say a special thank you to our working group who spent many days and many nights and weekends over the past number of months collaborating on this financial agreement. I'd like to now welcome Minister O'Regan to speak, and I'd also like to recognize the members of Parliament that are here today. I know how closely you work together on this. Our partnership with the Government of Canada is essential as we continue our work to protect the people of the province from the escalating electricity rates due to the Muskrat Falls project. We know our federal partners understand the challenges we are currently facing in the province, and we also know they understand the tremendous opportunities we have to build our economy and support a bright future for the people of our province. Please join me in welcoming Minister O'Regan.
Thank you, everyone. First off, I want to thank the Prime Minister for his personal interest in this and his clear understanding of its importance to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. I want to thank the Deputy Prime Minister, who obviously needed another challenge after NAFTA, but certainly came on to rate mitigation, came on to this issue for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador with all the verve and intellect that you would expect from her. I want to thank Bill Morneau for his expertise and his financial acumen and his leadership. And I want to thank the good people of the department that I just inherited in November, the Department of Natural Resources, but filled with officials who have been working on this for some time and with a real passion and commitment and an understanding of its importance to this province. But I look at the members of Parliament, I look at MHAs who are present and ministers. I want to single out the Premier. I just wanted to say thank you, Dwight. Just like the Atlantic Accord, common courtesy, a keen ear, and mutual respect. His knowledge of this file and his commitment to it is unheralded. And just like I said to you last year, Dwight, for you and your team, the kettle is always on. Because when we stay focused on common objectives, our governments are capable of getting the hard stuff done. You can see that in the renewed Atlantic Accord, which is an additional $2 billion over the next 10 years to the people of the province. We knew then, and we know now, that we have to keep working together to secure the prosperity of this province. We knew that there was enough uncertainty, that too many politicians had played fast and loose with the public purse. We had to deliver. We had to deliver certainty, clarity, and predictability to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And it was especially nice on that day to renew the Atlantic Accord on the 70th anniversary of Confederation, because that is how Confederation is meant to work. It's important for people to know that the federal government recognizes the scale of the problem and the impact that it could have on the people of this province. We know it because your MPs and your MHAs represent the same people. They're our families, our friends, our neighbors, and they remind us about this all the time. We're ratepayers too. And we are keenly aware of what is coming down the wire. We've all thought hard about mini splits and wood stoves. So make no mistake, we are committed to meeting those challenges head on. We said that we would be there to help, and we will be. Today, I am happy to announce that the Government of Canada and the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador have launched negotiations to restructure the financing of the Muskrat Falls project. These negotiations will look at various options that are in the joint interests of both governments, and what is in the joint interests of both governments is a long-term, permanent solution. In the shorter term, we also acknowledge that Newfoundland and Labrador is seeking measures to reduce its cash requirements related to servicing the Muskrat Falls project's debt. So, the federal government will offer short-term flexibilities that would reduce the government of Newfoundland and Labrador's near-term cash requirements, including deferring payments into the sinking fund and waiving Korea pre-funding requirements. Look, in politics, you're drawn to the quick fix. But let's be honest, we all know there is no quick fix for Muskrat Falls. There's no magic bullet. There's no single piece of policy that can make it all go away, that can resolve such a large and complicated mess. Today's measures will help the province bear the weight of Muskrat Falls in the short term, and we are committed to be there to help sort this out in the years to come. We will now work on the financial sustainability of the project, because sustainability of the project is what will allow the province to achieve rate stability. And that is what we all want here, rate stability. We are committed to it. We are together in this for the long haul. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister O'Regan. Through the initiative announced today, together with the delivery of our rate management plan, we are protecting you from the increases in electricity rates due to the Muskrat Falls project. Thank you for joining us at today's event, and for the members of the media, will now be available for interviews if you so wish. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yep.
So will this announcement today, will this allow you to keep rates at 13.5 cents next year?
What this does is it mitigates the full impact of Muskrat Falls. We've taken this analysis over the 50 years of this power purchase agreement, and we've completely mitigated the impact of Muskrat Falls on the rates of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. It's 13.5 cents. That's the benchmark that we've put in there. And as you know, the Public Utilities Board has been doing a great job for over 70 years in putting in place reliable and affordable rates for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. And they will continue to do that in the future. The cost of Muskrat Falls is mitigated.
But how are you going to, there's a $4.8 billion hole that you're going to have to fill between now and 2040. How are you going to do that?
Well, this is part of the overall plan, and this is the reason why it was important to be able to do the complete analysis for the life of Muskrat Falls. So some of the ideas there that are already in a rate mitigation plan, it's about electrification, decarbonization of the economy, is how we monetize in the future certain revenue streams. This is not about selling off assets, it's about balancing through the life of the plan the revenue streams that are in place. There's enough there to cover the cost of debt over the life of the plan, and there's enough there to mitigate the overall impact of Muskrat Falls. Rates will not be going up as a result of the Muskrat Falls project.
The province going to have to give up in terms of dividends and revenue that it was going to be receiving in order to make this.
There was an enormous amount of dividends that were really not required. So this is dividends that would be going to Nalcor. So what we're saying to ratepayers, this will stay in your pockets. There will be no transfer of cash from the ratepayers into Nalcor and then back into some subsidization mechanism. It stays in the pockets of ratepayers from day one.
A lot of people in other provinces like Ontario look at 13.5 cents and think, wow, we'd love to have that. How can you justify moving out this province with electricity rates when so many others pay so much more?
What we were focusing on here is the sustainability of this particular deal and where we could be helpful to the province. I mean, that was a commitment that we made, the commitment that the Prime Minister made. You know, we will work with them on the sustainability of the model, and then what the province decides to do with that, well, I think is fairly evident. They want to put it towards rates. But it's important that, yeah, there's a clear delineation because, you know, we are a national government. But in this case, financially, we're able to kind of get under the hood, as I keep saying, of this deal and figure out where we can be helpful. And we've identified a number of places where we can be in the short term. In the long term, where we want to be is the sustainability of the deal. Because if we can achieve a sustainable Muskrat Falls project, sustainable financial model, that means we will be able to achieve rate stability. And that is what everybody, I think, in the province wants.
How realistic do you think it is to be able to find and bring a lot of the details we're hearing still have to be negotiated?
I have said 1,000,001 times, I said it at the doors because this was what everybody, every single door, I think that every candidate in the federal election knocked on had the same concern, and that was rates. And what I've said time and again is that it has taken us a long time to get into this mess, and it will take some time to get out of it. But it's very important that we're transparent and open with people, that where we can provide them the assurance that we're hard at it, and as the Premier identified, you know, that rates will remain stable, then we have a responsibility to do that. So that's always been the argument that I've made. People have enough going on in their lives and enough insecurity and anxiety about what's going on, that where we can provide some assurance in this, we need to do it. And I have been my singular focus really has been on ratepayers, on the anxiety that they feel, the anxiety that my constituents feel, that the constituents of every member of Parliament feel, and therefore every MHA and the Premier. And, you know, people are on edge about this, and they need to know that we are working hard at it in a sustainable, fundamental way. We're rolling up our sleeves. We've been hard at it. We, I think, turned a significant milestone here now, and that's why we wanted to come forward and let everybody know this. No, we're working on the province on the sustainability of the project itself. I mean, as I identified, you know, in areas like sinking funds in the Korea accounts. No, because we're still at the table and we're still trying to figure all of that out. On the sustainability of the project itself, you know, where can we be helpful? And there are a lot of financial tools and levers in which we have demonstrated today we can be helpful, and we will continue to do that, I think, in the months ahead. I expect us to do our jobs and make sure that we look after the primary concern of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. No. No.
This is an agreement that's premised on but all indications point towards cost going up. And one notable thing in this agreement is that it provides the space to
Well, one of the things that I want to say back to an earlier question is that none of the changes that we are talking about today can be made without the support of the federal government. The federal government would need to be involved in all the changes that we're talking about today to mitigate the cost of Muskrat Falls. When you look at what would be the risks in the future, we've made provision in this agreement to make sure where the risks that we've identified, what I mentioned to you on Friday of last week, that we've identified that the project is not completed yet, but there's mechanisms there to actually involve and pay for the risks that would be in the future as well. So we recognize it's not a finished project, understanding that there's still some risks that are associated with this project, but that is all part of the overall plan that we're announcing here today. It is, and if you look at the PUB report, they gave a schedule of where we are, and as I said in my speech here today, that these decisions would have to be completed by the time of commissioning of the project. So right now it comes down to the timeline, the schedule of the project, but these changes would have to be done before commissioning of the project.
Next general rate application, that's due in September. Do you need things kind of firmed up by there?
Well, some of these changes now, of course, will reflect what the rate application would need to be in September. So these are decisions now as they put together their application, what the timing would be, what the impact of commissioning would be. So, these are all things that Hydro would need to consider before that rate application is made.
If the cost of Muskrat Falls goes to, higher than it is today, does that send this whole thing back to the ground?
No, it does not. There's flexibility in this plan right now to make sure that any associated risk, future either schedule or financial, would be dealt with under this one plan. This is a long-term solution. One of the things that getting into this in the beginning, when you look at a 10-year plan or less, if you remember those comments, it became very apparent when we started dealing with this that we had to fix this once and for all. This had to be a long-term plan.
Who are very skeptical. They've heard these sorts of assurances before. It's a great plan. We've got a great agreement. It's all going to work out wonderfully. What do you say to people who said, we've heard this before, and especially when there aren't a lot of specific details out there?
Well, there is, when you look at the specifics around the details and where the money would come from, I think that's been all outlined today. The cost of service model, which is a very big change to what the revenue stream would look like when this plan was announced. There's billions of dollars of dividends that would be in the hands of Nalcor will now stay in the pockets of rate players. That's a big component of this deal. The monetization, we know where the opportunities are, and as I said a few minutes ago, there's provisions made to make sure the debt servicing for this project, once it's commissioned, that is taken care of for the 50-year plan in all of this as well. An important piece, and Seamus, that we've just mentioned, is around electrification and decarbonization. We are already working on the buildings and areas that we have in our province now that we can take off of oil and put them onto electricity. So, this is a long-term plan, and it is a solution for the impact of Muskrat Falls. Well, there is, as I've just mentioned them in the speech when I spoke there, the dollars were all there. We talked about the $30 billion funding gap that will need to be addressed, primarily from the largest part of that will be from the revenue model, the dividend stream that we spoke about, moving to a cost of service, a more traditional cost of service like we've seen everywhere in North America. Matter of fact, the Public Utilities Board addresses that as well. This whole structure put billions of dollars into dividends into Nalcor. We're taking them back and giving them to ratepayers.
Are there any elements of this deal that will have to make it through the provincial?
Well, we're looking at that as well. I can anticipate that there will be provincial changes that will need to be required, whether that's in the legislature, in orders of council, or some legislative requirements for sure for us on behalf of the province. I remember the days of sitting hours in that legislature, and many of you here today could as well, when we, in opposition, were actually making sure that we took every effort we can or we could at the time to prevent this from happening. So I'm sure some of that will need to be reversed, but we are more than prepared to do that as quickly as possible.
Can I ask Mr. O'Regan a question?
Yeah.
About Emera and Nova Scotia and the Maritime Link. What's the involvement there on this?
No clear specific involvement that I'm aware of. I mean, what we're talking about with the Korea funds and the sinking funds in the short term are relevant, to the project here. The Labrador Island Link obviously is relevant solely to the project here. And I would just offer that, whenever we work on the sustainability of the project as a whole, it can only be, I think, a good thing for all partners who are involved.
But there was a federal loan guarantee for the Maritime Link as well, so will that be included as well?
No, we're focused solely on the project here, on the Lower Churchill project itself. There's enough complexities going on there, really, to keep us busy for quite some time.
Mr. O'Regan, there are quite a few protesters outside who are not very happy with the project in BC and the RCMP's involvement to remove protesters there. Well, what's your message to the people outside today?
I'm glad they're here. I walked through them to make sure that I saw their placards and saw what they wanted to tell me. At that point in time, I don't think they wanted to chat, but they wanted to make sure that they got their message across. And look, natural resource development in this country at a time when we've committed to net zero, when a majority of Canadians have voted with clear concern about climate change, there's going to be protests, and people feel very strongly about it. So I was more than happy to hear their concerns, and I'm sure I'll be hearing a number of others as I go across the country.
So one last thing, does the province or federal government have any sort of plan yet for what happens if other pressures go on tickets, like keeping Holyrood?
We mentioned this on Friday as well, but the changes, whatever they would be on the Holyrood, is all part of this plan, and it's all factored into this plan.
Well, we're told by the Public Utilities Board, and that's a source I think we can all trust, that we're short $400 million a year to make up the promise that Mr. Ball gave us to hold rates down. Where is the $400 million coming from? He's asked the federal government for $200 million a year. I'm not hearing how that's going to materialize, nor did I hear them address where the other $200 million that the province is going to have to find, where that's coming from. So these remain mysteries that have to be resolved, I'm afraid. We're no further ahead that I can tell, or very little further ahead than we were yesterday. This whole exercise, I'm afraid, is a propaganda exercise designed to distract the public from Mr. Ball's troubles over patronage and Carla Foote. That's what this is. Thank you.
What's your reaction? What was announced today?
I'm a little underwhelmed. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more detail in that. I didn't get the opportunity to go to the technical briefing, so hopefully I'll get some more details there, but still lots of unanswered questions for sure. I would have liked a little bit more quantification. I would have loved to have heard that the federal government was willing to provide the $200 million that the Premier had suggested they would back before the last election. That would have been really reassuring. And at this point, no one has quoted what the rate will be. They've said the rates won't go up, but we got no guarantee that it's only going to 13.5 and for how long it will go there. So those are concerns. There was a little bit of question. The Premier was talking about long-term rates when we heard the Minister O'Regan talking about short-term solutions. So those two things don't seem to go hand in hand. Another thing I was concerned about was the monetization of assets. They said we won't be giving up any of those assets, but I'm really curious to find out how that monetization will happen. And I think the other question that I had that was a little bit lingering as well is there talked about a move to decarbonization. So will that have any impact on our Advance 2030? If we are decarbonising locally, are we also going to take a more prudent world approach and look at less investment in offshore oil in our province as well? So that's an outstanding question for me. All right, not bad, everybody, thank you.
Well, I think that it's a step, and it's a step that puts off some short-term cash flow, $150 million, but that's really the only figure that we heard today that has any meaning. The rest of it is an agreement to agree, an agreement to negotiate a different model. Now, they may need the federal government, the province to make that happen, for sure, but I don't think that that's the full solution. I mean, if we don't know what the end result of that negotiation is going to be. Obviously, we'd hope for the best, but I mean, we need a commitment to other things as well. And not that that's not a commitment, and I don't doubt the sincerity of what was being said today by Minister O'Regan in his, suggested that this is a commitment from the federal government. They will negotiate, they will discuss, but we're really talking about essentially a restructuring of debts. And what I see is the dividends that from Muskrat Falls that might have gone to the government and the taxpayer is now going to the mitigation pot as opposed to going back to the province. So, these are details to be worked out. But what I saw missing today was something more than just financial restructuring. What about ways of lowering the cost of electricity to people or cost of heating to people? What about energy retrofit that can lower 25 to 30 to 35% of people's cost of energy? That's something that the federal government has a program for, but can it not be tailored to be sure that it's going to work here in Newfoundland and Labrador, so people who can't afford the cost of electricity now have some mitigation of their costs, and as it goes up, and it will go up beyond 13.5 cents a kilowatt hour, you can be sure of that. There's no commitment to keep it at that forever, let's face it. So, these are things that can be done. How about more electrification? What about a plan to work with the City of St. John's to electrify the public transit, something that will use Muskrat Falls power and make the project more viable. Electrification, we talked about some buildings, but that's something that could be ramped up as well to industry and support that. I just talked to the Minister, Minister O'Regan, and we're talking about, well, what about electrification of some of industrial plants like the offshore oil? Could they do it in other countries now? It may not be practical because of the distances here, but all aspects where you can make sure that and this is in the PUB report, by the way. Don't write off the PUB report. The numbers might be different because of the restructuring, but they have a lot of suggestions. If you look, there's a step-by-step approach at the end, a work plan essentially for dealing with some of those other mitigation efforts that are not in the fiscal side, but are in how we do business and how the other policy areas can attract us. So there's got to be some more creativity, some more commitment on other programs, and finding creative ways to make sure that the government of Canada is all hot, and we are too as a party in ensuring that we work on climate change. Well, here's an opportunity with a province that's committed to, and it's already built at great cost, obviously, a system that's going to be 99% plus, low carbon electricity. Well, let's find a way to reward that as a national government to make sure that the others are encouraged to do it. The PUB talks about possibly the province letting off the HST on electricity. Well, maybe the federal government should consider that as part of an overall plan to use electricity instead of using fossil fuels as part of a program to decarbonize the country and meet targets. When you see them dealing with Alberta, for example, they look at a package, several different things that they're talking about, some creative ideas. Well, let's start using that same approach in dealing with assisting Newfoundland and Labrador in its high cost of energy, which really shouldn't be when we're going out of our way to provide a system that works. We've got this coal-fired plant still in Nova Scotia. That could be replaced with electricity. Maybe they need to be incentivized by the federal government to make that plan work and use some of that electricity. The lines are there, they're already there, the method of dealing with them is there. Perhaps that's something that also could be looked at. So let's just get beyond the restructuring of debt, or debt counseling, if you want to call it that, or restructuring ways of doing it, paying the same amount of money over a longer period of time. Yes, it might make it easier to get through over a hump, but it doesn't really lessen the costs. So I'm for finding more creative solutions.
This exercise today seemed to be about putting the minds of Newfoundlanders at ease about their electricity rates. Do you think that was achieved today? Do you think Newfoundlanders can rest easy now?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we had Dwight assured voters in before the last provincial election that that ratepayers are not going to pay, the taxpayers are not going to pay. Pretty hard to believe that, you know, that's not something that's realistic. Doesn't sound realistic then, and it doesn't necessarily sound realistic now. You're going to pay one way or the other. But I think this effort today, I think, yes, it is designed to assure people that the panic has been on. People have been talking about that everywhere you go, what's going to happen when Muskrat Falls comes on stream, and that is certainly a worry. And by taking that $150 million out of the short-term package, that's going to ease the rate shock a little bit, and I think perhaps that restructuring of the debt is going to smooth it out as well. But I think we need more, and if you look at the PUB report, talking about the things that need to be done to make efficiencies, but in the longer term, we're going to have a system that is sustainable, and it's not going to be a burden fiscally on the province for all the companies. People are worried about rates. There's one thing for sure, and we got to keep them as low as we can, but we also got to make sure that we got things in place that are going to make it cheaper for people to heat their homes if the cost of energy is there, and if we're going to be forced into decarbonizing the society, which we have to do, then we've got to find ways of fitting into that now and doing it now so that when the rates come, they won't be as high as they should be. Okay.
Response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Welcome back to Out of the Fog. I'm here with Deputy Mayor of City of St. John's, Sheila O'Leary. Thanks again for being here.
I'm delighted.
And we've talked all about the storm, which is kind of still top of mind for everybody in town. But there's a lot more going on in City Hall and a lot of other topics. So I wanted to kind of chat with you about some of those. So the first one that jumped out at me is the introduction of alcohol sales to movie theaters.
That's right.
And of course, last night at City Hall, the majority of council voted to allow it, you know, in the capacity that they can allow it. But you and Councillor Wally Collins objected. So, you know, I guess what is the basis of your objection to bringing